Welcome into this special edition of the Fast Lane. Trey Lyle here with you. And for the first time in these game previews all season, I'm joined by a former player, a former Duke offensive guard, Dave Harding. Dave, let's jump right into it. Thank you so much for joining me today. And this matchup, this kind of unique matchup, between Duke and Virginia Tech because of kind of the state of the programs of both teams kind of both struggling but both kind of trying to look for some footing, Duke looking for their first ACC win, Virginia Tech just trying to build any sort of momentum towards the end of the season. What are your thoughts about this matchup as the Blue Devils head into Lane Stadium?
Yeah, I think, you kind of teed it up nicely in saying that both of these teams not having the season that they anticipated having. Obviously, Virginia Tech getting off to such a great start against what was expected to be one of the top teams in college football against North Carolina, might have set expectations a little too high. And the Blue Devils stumbled out of the gate and have tried to gather some energy along the way. But either way, I think, both fan bases somewhat disappointed in the outcome of the game so far. So this is an opportunity for two teams that see each other every single year. Obviously, they're in the Coastal Division together. There's been a fair share of very good games in recent history between these two programs. I think this is a chance for one team, and whether, depending on who that is, based off of the quality of play from each one of these individual clubs, to take a step forward as they try to move ahead in November and finish the year on a strong note. So although neither of these teams are where they expected to be at this point in the season, both still in the hunt for bowl eligibility, this game, I think, goes a long way in providing some momentum, like I said, into the final stretch of this 2021 season.
This is really a must-win game if either team wants to make a bowl game. I know Virginia Tech technically could win down the final stretch, but it would be very difficult for them to win at Miami and at Virginia, the way both those two teams are playing, probably outside of Pitt, the best two teams in the Coastal Division this season. And for Duke, you're 3-6, you have to win out. And they have some winnable games down the stretch with, the defenses they'll play down the stretch, I guess is what I would put it. Probably the brightest spot for this team has been Mateo Durant, the running back, over 1,000 yards. As a former offensive guard, how fun is it to kind of watch him run, and how fun would it be for this, having a guy like that as an offensive lineman?
Oh, I would love it. And I've thoroughly enjoyed watching his progression through the years that he's been within the Blue Devil program, each year kind of taking on a little bit more responsibility. The Blue Devils, you'll remember, kind of been a team that have used the stable of running backs, they like to call it, kind of running back by committee, 2 or 3 players sharing the load. And this year, David Cutcliffe had no choice but to hand the ball off, in some cases 40 plus times, to Mateo Durant, just because of the command that he has, of the offense, the understanding, finding the holes, but more so than anything, the competitive drive that he plays with. And that's what I love so much. And as an O-lineman, what I would have loved blocking for, and I know the current Duke O-line feels the same way. This is a guy that will call off any support coming in. If a coaching staff thinks he needs to take a breather, he takes offense to that. He wants to stay in the game. He wants the ball in his hands. He wants to run hard. He is certainly fast enough to run away from a defense, elusive. He's got those traits, but I think more than anything, what surprises some teams is his physicality, his willingness to take a hit, kind of lower the shoulder, and the strength in his leg drive. So he is definitely dedicated to the craft. And the most important thing, take the 1,000 yards rushing away, take all the other accolades. Truthfully, this is a player that wants to win above all else. And it's certainly fun to support a player like that.
And moving to the quarterback, Gunnar Holmberg, he's had these moments of great play. It's just been kind of inconsistent. 7 touchdowns, 6 interceptions is probably you don't want from your quarterback, but he's shown his ability, at points this season. What do you want to see from him, not just in this game, but down the stretch to kind of build upon his game?
Well, you're exactly right. The inconsistency part has been something that's essentially plagued the Duke offense for the past 2 seasons. Last year was a major problem with turnovers, not as much of an issue this season, but the Blue Devils have been able to move the ball pretty well outside of enemy territory. When it gets into the red zone, when they start moving across the 50-yard line, things start to fall apart, whether that's penalties, turnovers, that you miss plays, empty plays that get you behind the sticks offensively. And so that inconsistency is probably a trait that has been around the Duke offense. And you mentioned that being something that you've seen in watching Gunnar Holmberg. Certainly, the highs are great, but they're not able to sustain that all that much. And it's going to be interesting this weekend. I know Virginia Tech has the same kind of questions going into the game. Who starts at quarterback for the Blue Devils? Who's able to play on a consistent basis? Both, obviously, Braxton Burmeister for the Hokies. He's had his share of injury issues lately. Gunnar Holmberg left the game against left the game against Pittsburgh last week. All the games are starting to run together.
I get that.
With an apparent upper body injury of some kind. So going to be very interesting to see who the Blue Devils opt to roll out at quarterback. And Riley Leonard, his backup, has certainly been capable, shown flashes of greatness, played a good bit against Virginia, certainly a lot last week in the second half against Pittsburgh. This is a guy that can run the ball a little bit more physically than Gunnar Holmberg can. And so the Blue Devils, I think, feel that they've got two capable quarterbacks. Obviously, Holmberg is the more experienced, but it comes down to that consistency part. Who's able to play the most consistently, get the ball in the hands of the playmakers, and move your way down the field. And once you're in the red zone, find a way to capitalize on those opportunities.
In talking about, moving to the other side of the ball, you kind of touched on it. Maybe no Braxton Burmeister. It's very much in the air. He's been practicing this week, and I made this joke when I was previewing the Notre Dame UVA game this week. Coaches, you never know. Every injury is a blank body injury, and they're questionable, like in college. So that's kind of how injuries work. So we don't know what's going to happen. Connor Bolnick has been banged up. Their true backup, the Texas A&M Trevor, and then they have Knox Kadum, who came in against Boston College and frankly didn't look that well. So this is a very, Duke's defense has struggled this season. And so my expectation for the Virginia Tech offense is to ride Malachi Thomas, who's been this freshman sensation down the stretch. Like how good does Duke need to be keyed in on this Virginia Tech run game, which has kind of been the only consistent force of this offense somewhat this season?
Yeah, you've got to consider the gauntlet that the Blue Devil defense and really any Coastal Division defense has been through. But, you look at the most recent game against Pittsburgh, Kenny Pickett is lighting up everyone, the stats and everybody. Wake Forest, Sam Hartman, that crew has done a fantastic job this season. Virginia's got a pretty darn good quarterback. Georgia Tech, Jeff Sims, multi-talented, can do it all. Obviously, Sam Howell at North Carolina. So it's been quite the daunting task to go out and defend some of these offenses. When you look at it statistically, Duke doesn't have a great defense. I don't think that tells the whole story. They've got some good young players that are playing at a pretty high level. Some of the statistical issues also are from the offense and their inability to sustain drives and to put points up on the board, keeping the defense out a little bit too long. So when you look at this matchup, Virginia Tech's offense against the Blue Devil defense, I think the number one point of emphasis for Duke is, as you said, to find a way to limit the way that Malachi Thomas and the rest of the running back crew run the football. If you can take that away, make it a little bit more one-dimensional, you've got an opportunity to have success. But the Blue Devils, I think their main point of emphasis this week is to their young defensive line, the interior of the D-line, the linebackers, say we've got to play our most physical game against an offense that isn't as much of an air raid attack as we've seen in the past couple of weeks.
And you talked about like the level of quarterbacks they've played down the stretch. And, Braxton Burmeister, when healthy, has kind of been able to compete with those. I mean, you could argue the first game of the season, he outperformed Sam Howell. So, but he's banged up, and Knox Kadum, who might play, or even Connor Bolnick, he's not, this is definitely kind of a downgrade in the quarterback position for Virginia Tech compared to, Kenny Pickett and who Brendan Armstrong and Sam Hartman and Sam Howell. Like, how opportunistic can the defense be in this game, whereas they might not have been able to in the previous couple?
Well, I think injuries, you talk about Braxton Burmeister and who's going to play. Is it going to be Kadam that comes in? But then we haven't talked about some of the absences that Virginia Tech has experienced at wide receiver. You know, Trey Turner being a great example of that, not playing the last time out due to injury. What's he going to look like? Is he going to be available? And when you factor those things in, obviously there becomes a chemistry issue that you've got to be aware of. And I think that the Duke defense sees an opportunity. I don't think that anybody anticipates them coming in and be able to shut out a Virginia Tech offense just with the number of talented playmakers that they have and the scheme that they run. But I think the Blue Devils see a chance, especially in a place like Lane Stadium, where they have had success, in recent history, to go up in a great environment, great atmosphere, and try to get back on track looking for your first ACC win.
I remember the 45-10 game last time they were in Lane Stadium. I remember it vividly. That was the last time. And just to let you know, Dave, Trey Turner just tweeted out that he says he's playing, which take that for what you will. So the leading receiver for Virginia Tech will come back in this one, it appears, because it will be his senior day there as well. So let's kind of go sort of off the field noise. Like, there's been noise around both these teams. I think a lot more at Virginia Tech than at Duke, with David Cutcliffe, who's kind of, as your former coach, kind of is the greatest coach in this program's history. They've had Steve Spurrier, but the success that David Cutcliffe brought to this program, how has watching both teams this week, do you still feel like they're playing hard for the coach they have? I think Duke definitely, appears to be. There's a lot more noise around Virginia Tech, obviously, given the hot seat that is college football coaching.
Yeah, I do feel that this team, the roster, still believes in David Cutcliffe. They still believe and have a sense of pride in what it means to be a Duke football player. I don't think there's any person in the entire program that is happy with how things have transpired this year. And I don't think there's anybody that's just taking a back seat to say, you know what, it is what it is. We're going to just let this ride. Everybody's working diligently to get it back on track. It becomes so cliche. Coaches say it all the time. Each game is its own season. We're taking it one at a time. I really do feel more than years past that this team has embodied that, and they're really working on trying to get better each week and facing off, full focus on their opponent. And David Cutcliffe, not a usual occurrence in the press conference a couple of weeks ago, was asked about his sense of job security and what his thoughts about the situation were. He said, and he gave, I think, the best answer you possibly could, that he doesn't have the time to think about that he is fully committed and fully invested in getting this team ready to play. And I think that's the way the players feel as well. There might be, the armchair quarterbacks, the people on Twitter that are barking about certain things, not happy with the outcome. Guarantee you, David Cutcliffe is not pleased with the outcome either. And he's in a position to do something about it and putting all of his attention there. So I think the buy-in, the want to, especially when you consider the fact that they're heading up to Virginia Tech, my favorite place to play as a player, hands down. Always got excited about going to Blacksburg. It's tough to play there, but that's the environment that you love. That's what you want. That's what every high school guy dreams of doing, going on the road into a hostile environment and trying to play your best. So I don't anticipate energy, enthusiasm, or buy-in being an issue at all, and you're going to get the Blue Devils' best shot.
Well, spread Tech favored by 11.5, over under 51. So obviously, maybe not a lot as many points as people think in this one. You're calling the game, obviously, for the Duke Radio Network as part of that great crew. Just give me a couple keys you want to see from the Blue Devils in this one that maybe could lead to them pulling off another upset in Lane Stadium.
I'll say this. I think that 11.5 is pretty high, to be honest. You got to think last year the Blue Devils were in a similar situation from an offensive output standpoint. Not able to win games, couldn't have the consistency, and it was a 38-31 loss for the Blue Devils. So just a close game. We've talked about some of the recent history up in Lane Stadium. This has kind of been a back and forth type game and rivalry of sorts over the years. So when you consider that, when you consider where both of these teams are trying to fight, it's senior day, as you mentioned earlier, in Virginia Tech, there's a lot on the line. And I don't anticipate this being a blowout either way. Both offenses have struggled. Both offenses have question marks. So it's going to be up to who's able to come out and, to me, make the big plays. The explosive plays are going to be the difference in the outcome of the game, and the ability to sustain some kind of drive and consistency on the field. So I'm looking forward to it. Can't wait to be up there. Might even try to snag a turkey leg while I'm there.
Highly recommend.
Yeah, that was my only gripe as being a player, as I couldn't get out onto the concourse and get one. So happy to be on this side of things, and certainly excited to see another game in this series that usually finds a way of being entertaining.
I completely agree with that. And any 10-point spread in the Coastal, you basically just say anything can happen in the Coastal Division, as you know, as someone who's played in that division over the years and how wild it can be. Well, Dave, how can fans connect with you online and maybe give more of this great analysis that you gave?
Yeah, feel free to fight back with me at Dave Harding Jr. on Twitter. I am always happy to engage and to interact, and think that helps sharpen everybody, right? Love to hear different opinions, and certainly hopeful that we have plenty of big plays on both sides on Saturday, because really what we're looking for is great competition, some more Coastal chaos. Why not? Let's keep it rolling.
Well, Dave, thank you so much for joining me this week on this special edition of Fastlane. As always, you can with me at Trey Lyle VT, at Fastlane Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. As always, thanks for listening to this special edition of the Fastlane.